Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you everything that you have to know about GUIs. GUIs are pronounced GUIs, or I guess you can also pronounce them GUIs, as a lot of people have told me in the comments. What I've noticed is most college professors will pronounce it GUI, and that's all fun and that's all nice, but a lot of people also want to pronounce it GUI. So the debate continues. You can tell me in the comments whether it's a GUI or if it's GUI, but for consistency, I am going to be calling it GUI. So let's get this video started. Alright, so basically you have starter GUI right here, and you're going to want to right click and insert an object called screen GUI. And this is basically an invisible layer that goes in your screen. You can't really see it, but whatever you put inside this will appear on your screen. So let's say you right click this and you insert like a text label. Boom, there it is. So that's what this is. This is an invisible thing that allows you to put other GUIs, and a text label is a type of GUI. So what is a GUI? Well, a GUI is basically any 2D object that goes on your screen, so like buttons, frames, images, that kind of thing. So a text label is also a type of GUI, and suppose you don't have this screen GUI here. If you go to starter GUI and you add a text label, you're not going to see it. Where did it go? It's because you don't have a screen GUI. So that is one very, very important thing that you have to remember whenever you're doing GUI scripting. You need a screen GUI. It might be one of the reasons why your GUIs aren't working. So my hope for you in this video is I want to address all of your concerns about GUIs. I want to provide a crash course on everything you gotta know about GUIs. And I just want to help everyone because I know that everyone's had a lot of trouble in the UI scaling video. There's been like hundreds of comments, like there's so many problems, and I obviously didn't address all of them in that one short video. So I want to make this a comprehensive tutorial, and I want to address as many things as I can. So let's get started. Okay, so you have your text label and obviously it didn't show up. So why is that? It's because you're missing a screen GUI. So under starter GUI, there should always be a screen GUI before you have any other GUI objects. And if you do that, then it'll show up on your screen. So this is a text label. This is an example of a GUI that it just shows text basically. And you can set the size just like what I did here. With size, you have to note that there's scale and there's offset. So what's the difference? So basically you have four numbers here. The first number is scale, second number is offset, third number is scale, fourth number is offset. So it just goes scale, offset. And the first pairs of numbers, like these right here, these guys, this is the X value. And this is the Y value. Let's reset this to 0, 0. That means there's no size, so your text label disappeared. Another thing you can check if something isn't working is maybe it has 0 size. Obviously, it won't show up if it has 0 size. Do 0.5, 0, 0.5, 0. So now we've got 0.5 on the scale. Remember, scale, offset, 0.5, and it's the X value because this is the X value and this is the Y value. So you've got 0.5 on the scale. So what does that mean? It means if you resize your screen, it will always be 0.5 of the width of your screen. So what does that mean? Okay, so that means 0.5 is another way of saying 50%, right? So 50% is half. If you look at this edge right here, this is about halfway. So like this is the width of your screen, and this is halfway about that width. So this is like half of that width basically, right? So if you put 0.5, that'll be half. And now what if you put 1? Well, 1 is 100%. So 1, boom, 100% of your screen. And if you were to resize it, no matter where you are, it will always be 100% in width. Okay? Now, we can also do the same thing with height. So we can say 1, 0. Because let's just do 0.5, 0, 1, 0. Okay. So this means 50% on the X, right? Because 0.5 is 50%. And then on the Y, 100%. Because 1 is 100%. So whatever the percentage is, just divide it by 100. So 0.1 on the scale. That means you multiply it by 100. 0.1, multiply this by 100, it'll give you 10%. So this is basically saying this is 10% of the width of my screen. So this whole area right here, that's the width of my screen. And because we have this set to 0.1, that is 10%. So that's what scale does. And you always want to use scale whenever you're whenever you're trying to make something mobile compatible. Just like what I had mentioned before, if you resize this, the scale will also resize. So that's how that works. And similarly with Y, I can set this to 50% of my height. You can think about this edge right here. This edge right here is 100% of my screen height. And if this is set to 0.5, that means it's 50%. So if this is 100%, then it's halfway. So that's where this line comes into play. So this is halfway. So 50% of my screen height is given by this number right here, 0.5. And you can resize this and everything is all fine and well. Now we can talk about offset. So here's offset. The difference between scale and offset is that scale takes in a percentage, while offset is a pixel value. So that means there are 100 little squares are next to each other, like right here. You have to think about it like that, because a pixel is like a small square. Like there's a tiny square here, and there's a tiny square here, and there's a tiny square here, and like there's 100 of them. So that's what you have to think about whenever you're thinking of this right here. That's what scale is. It's like 100 pixels basically. And just remember that a pixel is a small rectangle with color. So this whole thing, like there's like 100 pixels here and 100 pixels down here. So this whole thing is made up of a bunch of small rectangles called pixels. There's 100 of them right here and 100 of them right here. Since it's 100 by 100, every row has 100 and every height is 100. So there's 100 here. Then if you go one line below, there's 100 here. It's 100 here. And you just keep on going. So it's just pixels. What is the difference between scale and offset? I'm going to make the position an offset value too. Now, suppose you have this GUI in the middle, right? You have this text label and it's in the middle. Now, if you take this window and you resize it, oh no, where'd it go? It's gone. Now, this is what, this is like, if one of your players are playing on a mobile device, this is what they're gonna see. And whoa, where did it go? My text label's gone. What? But I see it right here. If they're on a mobile device, it's like here. But if they're on a desktop device, it'll be right there. And that is like one of the really, really big issues about getting stuff to work on all sorts of devices. It is literally that if you're using offset, it will stay exactly where it is on the screen. So this is 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And no matter what happens to the screen, it's not going to resize or it's not going to reposition because they're both using offset. How do you know it's offset? Once again, scale, offset, scale, offset. First number is scale, second number is offset. Scale is percentage, offset is pixels. So offset is like a hard-coded value, while scale will depend on your screen size. So if you were to resize it, obviously it's gone. And let's talk about position now. So you've got X and Y, just like size. You've got scale and you got offset. And offset, you have 623 in the X value, right? So what's the 623 mean? It means if you go all the way over here, the X value is going to be 0. But as you keep going right, this is your distance in pixels from the left edge of your screen all the way to the left edge of the UI element. If you were to move this around, obviously this number changes, and this number will also change because these two are the same number, 457, 457. You change this, this will also change. And so basically this number is just the distance between this edge of your screen right here and that edge of that element. So you used offset here. The same thing applies with this number here, 380. I know this one says 393 because Roblox has a little bit of difficulty. When you play a game, there's this inset, like Roblox has this weird inset thing right here, and that kind of messes around with the exact position of your UI. That's why this is 380 and this is 393 because of that top bar as an inset. And I think you can actually script that if you wanted to. So ignore GUI inset right here. You know, you don't need to worry about it. But 380, 393, you know what I mean. These are not the same value because of that inset. And you can move this around and this number will change. So why are we using offset? Because offset will result in this kind of behavior, right? Where you don't see the screen. So generally you want to use scale. I only use scale. Like it's not only, it's like most of the time you will use scale if your game is going to be mobile compatible. Like see, if you set the position to 0.5, remember scale, offset, okay, 0.5, 0.5, right? See, it stays. And now that brings me to point number 3, which is anchor point. Oh, that's a point. Haha, no pun intended. Basically, anchor point, what it is, remember how we have position set to 50%, 0.5 is 50%. So you might be wondering, why is this in the middle? Like, come on, this is obviously not in the middle. If it was in the middle, this would be like right here, right? But it's not. Well, it's because of something called anchor point, which is this thing right here, 0, 0. And what anchor point is you see this, while this whole thing is not in the middle, this top left pixel right here, like that corner of the box, that is what is in the 50% zone. So it says 50% here, and you might be wondering why it's not looking 50%. It's because this thing right here, this top left corner, that pixel, that is the thing that is being centered. So this whole label is not being centered. It's just this top corner of the label. And what anchor point does is it kind of fixes it. So you set this to 0.5, 0.5, which is this is 50%, remember? Generally in Roblox, if you're setting these to a number between 0 and 1, you can think of it as a percentage. So 0.5, 0.5, that means 50% on the X and 50% on the Y. You enter it, boom. Now it's centered. And I know someone in the comments in my other video had actually pointed this out. I forgot to point it out. That video was a long time ago, but hopefully this will clear things up and credit goes to him. That's actually how, this is the proper way of centering something. You set anchor point to 0.5 on both the X and Y, and then you also set the position to 0.5, 0.5, and your GUI will always be centered. Oh yeah, also, if you noticed, I'm using offset here. The reason why you want to use offset here is because you want this to be the same size, but you want this to be in the center position. So since you want it to be in the center position, you want to use 0.5 here and 0.5 here, but since you want it to have the same size, you want to use offset. Because now, suppose you use scale, 0.20. Let's say you use scale, right? And if you notice, obviously this isn't centered anymore because I changed it. So make it 0.5 again. See, centered. Now, let's say I use scale. Well, now, look at what happened to my GUI. It just kind of like got squished, right? It all depends on your game. Some people want this to happen. Other people don't. So if you want it to happen, use, where is it? Use scale. If you don't want it to happen, use offset. So if you want like a literal square on the screen and you want that to always be a square, use offset. Because remember, offset is pixel. 50 or 100 pixels on here, 100 pixels down, and that's just repeated. So 100 here, 100 here, 100 here, 100 here, and you keep on going down 100 times. So that will create a perfect square no matter what type of screen size you have. You could even, like, if you mess around with this, you'll see it's always in the center. That is how to make your GUIs mobile compatible. This works for anything, but since we're on text label, I'm just going to breeze through all of this now. I'm going to show you all the properties and give you an idea of how everything works. So let's begin. So let's start with, I'm going to skip a couple because they don't really matter. But background color 3, it's self-explanatory. You click it, you can change the color, right? Say you like blue, bam. Background transparency, remember what I had said about everything being a percentage if it's between 0 and 1? This means it's 50% transparent. That means you can see through it 50%. If you set this to 1, that means it's 100%. That's like seeing through something 100%. It's like saying it's invisible, right? If you set this to 0, you can't see through it at all. So that's a percentage of how much you can see through an object. Border color 3, it's just the color of the border. And I see that it's not showing. It's because of this. There's border color 3, and the reason why your borders might not be showing is because your size is set to 0. Try setting it to 3. Bam, it's right there. So that's how you can do cool stuff with the border. You can set this to like 6 or 7. It becomes bigger. Size of the border given in pixels, so that means 6, meaning there's 6 pixels or something like that. I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert on pixels. I just know the general idea. I think the 6 pixel means like 6 pixels going downward, 6 pixels going like the radius 6 pixels, I guess. But this is basically a number. You make it smaller, the border becomes smaller. That's all you gotta understand. And name, obviously give it a name. Label. It just changes the name over here. You can do cool things with it when you code. Position, we've been over. Rotation, this is a number from 0 to 360. I think this can even go past 360, but there's no point, I guess. Because like, alright, so let's say you wanted this to be 23. Boom, it's tilted. And this is tilting clockwise. So Roblox's rotation goes clockwise. You set this to 79, 78, set it to 90. Now let's say you set it to 360, that's the same thing as 0. You can also set it to like 720, another multiple. This 0 and 360 are all the same because it's just 360 degrees. This is given in degrees, 25 degrees, right? Visible, true or false. Visible, invisible. Now z-index is where things get a little bit tricky. So let's say you have label and you have label 2. Let's call this label 2. Right. And z-index, what it does is this is the order that your UI elements are shown on the screen. So if you set this to 5, that means this has a higher order than this guy. So label has a higher z index than label 2. So that means if you take label and you go, if you like put it on top of label 2, this will be on the top because it has a higher z index. This is higher order. Think about it like a sandwich. This right here is your bun. This right here is the top of your bun. And your top bun has an order of 5, while your lower bun has an order of 1. Now, what about the vegetables inside? Well, let's make a new one. Let's call this label 3, and let's make this, you know, let's make this a bun. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so I literally turned it into a sandwich to show you. Okay, so this is your top, this is your bottom, and that's your vegetables, or your meat, or whatever. Let's make this 1. So label 3 is gonna have a z-index of 1. Okay, so top vegetables, bottom 1, and let's call this. So basically, okay, no, let me just veggies, and this will be top. This will be bottom. So you got your top, you got your veggies, and you got your bottom. So top should obviously have the most z-index. So this is a z-index of 5. Your bottom should have the least, so let's make it 0. And this should have something in the middle. So bottom has 0, veggies has 2, and top has 5. So what that means is if you put this, like you can see it's going in the bottom, and this is going in the top. This is because top has the highest z-index of all of these. So this has 5. Bottom has 0. So obviously bottom will be, it has the least order, right? So bottom will be in the bottom because it has the least z-index. Veggies in the middle. So like it makes a sandwich. So now we can go through all of these. So font face, this is just the font. Like you can change the way your text looks. I'm gonna get rid of this background color just to show you. So Josephine Sands, luckiest guy, you can see the way the font is changing. Actually, let's start with the text. So you can make this say whatever you want. And I'm gonna resize this. And if you set text scale to true, this thing will scale like this text size. Right here, this 14, it's gonna ignore this text size. This is the size of your text. So you can like set this to 18, you can set it to 22. But if you click text scale, this whole thing will be ignored. And Roblox will figure out exactly how big your text should be based on the size of your GUI, which is literally this thing right here. So you make this thing bigger, 40, and it becomes bigger. Why is this good? Because you can do this with it. Let's say you wanted something to pop up on the screen. And let's put this in the center again. So just 0.5. Also, why is it in the center? Because anchor point is set to 0.5, 0.5. So if you resize this, watch what happens to the size of the text. Remember that this means 100% of your screen size. And remember that text size is going to depend on what your screen size is because this is set to true, text scaled. If you resize your screen, watch what happens. Ooh. See? It will always show up on the screen, and that's awesome. It will literally show up on any screen you want. There are some exceptions, but that's for a later video. If you're wondering why your text isn't showing up on mobile devices, it's literally because you're probably setting this to 100, and like you see how it's like it's wrapping in a weird way. I don't think your players want to see this, right? Like whatever I want. No, we want it to scale. Now you can see it, right? So that's something to consider for your game. See how it like wraps in a weird way. It's an uncomfortable experience for your players, and I care about all of your games, so I want the best for your players. Also, if you're still watching this video, please like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. Let's say we did, let's say we set this to, I'm gonna do a really bad example. If you're wondering why your text isn't showing up, it's probably because it doesn't fit in the size. You set this to 0200, 0200, and it's so small. Like, how is it gonna fit, right? And you set the text size to 100, like you hard coded it. So Roblox will make it as big as it can, but it's not allowed to cross the bounds of your size, which is this. Now, if you were to resize this, it will show it. But the best thing to do, in my opinion, is set text scale to true, because this will fix everything for you. Like, just let Roblox do it. You don't have to go through all of that trouble. Just let your players, like, just make your UI, make it look good, and just set text scale to true. and Roblox will just do it. Oh yeah. Text scale does not work well unless you have scale. So don't use offset with text scale. Think remember, think text scaled, which is scale. So think about it like that. Always have to use scale when dealing with text scaled because it's in the name. Bam. Cool. So now we can actually talk about line height. I'm gonna show you guys what line height is. It's really simple. I just gotta rescale this. So I'm gonna type a bunch of text. And what line height is, it is the spacing between two lines of characters. So what is that? So that means you see in between the first line and the second line, there's this spacing right here, right? So if you increase the line height, it will increase that space. That is the amount of height in between two lines, basically. Line height. The amount of height in between two lines. Set it to 2, bam. Increased. You can slide this thing, make it look cool, right? 1 is default. So that's what line height is. And another thing you have to consider is text wrapped. If you set text wrap to true, Roblox will figure out that your text will not fit in this box. Like if you, let's say that, yeah, let's do this. I'm gonna set this to 0. Now let's say you want your text to all fit in here, and then you're having some trouble with it. Well, the reason is probably because text wrap is not set to true. Text wrap is something that tells Roblox to continue like wrapping your text on the next line. So like you see it, Roblox just trying to force it in because it wants your text to show. But if you want it to wrap across multiple lines, you want to set this to true. And it'll always fit on your frame. See? It'll always fit. Obviously, this has to be used like together with all the other properties to make it actually always fit. But you know what I mean. If you add more text here, it will wrap it. Wrapping meaning like it will add as much text as it can in here in the first line. Now when it runs out of space, it will go to the next line. That's what wrapping means. See? No matter how much you type, it'll wrap it. And the cool thing is if this is set to scale and you resize this, if the size is set to scale and you resize it, it will automatically wrap. It will fit everything you say. So that's cool. So let's say you wanted to set the stroke of your text. You can set this to a color. Obviously it's not showing up. The reason why it's not showing up is because text stroke transparency should be set to 0. That means the transparency of the stroke. And if you set this to 1, it means it's invisible. Remember 1 means 100%. So if you want to make it like you can mess around with this. You can even write a cool script to make it like smoothly go from white to transparent. And that's a cool text effect. So text Y alignment left, that's where it's aligned. So like let's say you're writing an essay. You'd want it to be aligned on the left, meaning like it's gonna start in the left. Let's say you wanted to write something different. You can align in the center. Or you were being weird, you can write it, align it in the right. Now, it's not weird, I'm just saying like you don't normally see text being aligned on the right side unless you're like throwing something in the right side of your screen. But it's usually left or center. But yeah, the same thing goes with text Y. Like if you make this top, it will push the text all the way to the top of the frame or top of the text label. You can go bottom, you can go center. Same thing. Okay, so another thing that you could do is rich text, which is you can make stuff bold. Hello, and then you write B in tags. This is like your, this is kind of like HTML. Basically, if you want a certain part of your text bolded, you'd write this thing right here, bracket B, bracket, angle bracket. And you can end it with a slash. So if you enter, you can see world gets bolded because it's in between the B and the second B. So you got angle bracket B, angle bracket, then you have whatever you want to bold. You have angle bracket slash B, angle bracket. So that means you want to bold that word. So that's why you see hello and you see world is bolded. And you can do the same thing with italics, which is I, instead of using B. Now the word world is italicized. You can underline it by changing the I to a U, U for underline, and hello world, C underlined. So that's stuff you can do if you have rich text enabled. If you don't have rich text enabled, it will think you are just writing text. So always enable this if you plan on using that. That is how you can like add style to a certain part of your text. Okay, so I've basically covered most of these, and those are like the main properties that you're probably going to be editing. So now we can actually move forward. And I probably just spent like 20 minutes just talking about a text label, But all of these have similar properties to the text label, so I can just fly through them. Now we're gonna go to frame. So what is a frame? Frame is just a frame. It's literally like, it's a shape that you can put on your screen. So think of a frame as like a text label, but with no text. It's just a frame. It's a rectangle, basically. It can be a square too, but that's literally what it is. And all of these properties are basically the same as text label, except it doesn't have the size properties. So all of these are basically the same. We've gone through all of this. You can change the background color of a frame, change the transparency. It's all the same as the text label. But the thing to realize is that this is a frame, so it does not have text. So if you are trying to put text on a screen, you will not use a frame. You would probably use a text label or a text button, which we will get to. So this also works the same way with the whole scale and offset thing. This means it's 100% of your screen. So if you resize this, so if you ever wanted to create like a credit screen, you'd probably use like a frame, make it like black, almost black. And then you can make a text label. You can put the text label inside the frame, and then that will make the text label show up on your screen. You can also do that, but the advantage, so let's say you're making a credit screen, right? And then let's resize this a little bit. Let's put this 0, 0, 0, 0. Now you have a text label, and we're gonna make this say credits. Credits. And obviously you can't see it because it's black, so do that, set text scale to true, change the font a little bit. Let's try this. So you have a credit screen now. And underneath this, you're going to have the names of all the developers that helped you on your project. So you're going to have like player 1, you're going to have player 1, you're going to have player 2. And now, since they're all under this frame, whatever happens to the frame will also happen to the text. So what does that mean? That means if you wanted, let's say you made this frame and you didn't like the fact that it took up the whole screen, you can resize the frame and you'll see the text also resizes with it. Oops, I think I'm moving it. See? You can resize it and the text will move with the frame. So that's how you can move multiple text at once. If you just want to move one text label, you can just click on it and drag it like that. But because they're all in a frame, because you put them inside of a frame, you can just move the frame around and the text labels, they will also move. Now if you didn't use a frame and you did that, if you move the frame, it's not going to affect the text label, because now all the text labels are children of this screen GUI. So if you move this around, it's not going to affect it. But if you take these three and you put them inside the frame, then you can move this around. So that is primarily why a frame would be useful. And if you want this to take up the whole screen again, all you got to do is change the size and change the position. And boom. That's like, you know, some people spend like 10 minutes just trying to get all the text labels to move in one spot. But I hope this helped you, because this is a lifesaver. Now you can move everything all at once. All right, so next up on the list is going to be let's do a text button. So what is a text button? It is literally a button with text. And this is all the same as a text label. So all of these are pretty familiar properties, and all of these are pretty much the same too. So think about a text button as a text label, but now you can click on it. So if you like hover over it, click on it. And this is all for scripters to code. So they can, like, if you have a text button, a scripter can say like, when the player presses the button, then do something else. So this is primarily for scripters to code. Whenever you have buttons that you want to use Roblox's text with, then you would use a text button. Otherwise, you would use an image button. What is an image button? Well, an image button is a text button, but it has an image instead of text. You can set your image through here. You can set the color of the image. So if you had an image here, let me find one really quickly. Okay, so let's say you had an image in the text button, and you could use image color 3, which will apply a tint to your image. So I can make this image have like a different tint. And if you want, like, suppose you had an image and you want it to be like a shadow, just set the image color 3 to 0, 0, 0, and it will be like a shadow. If it's all the way up, if it's 255, then that means it's all white, so it'll show the original image. If you want to make it green, just make it green. If you want to make it blue, just make it blue. And there's a couple more things in here with images. You have image rect offset and image rect size. What is this? Okay, so let's say if you wanted to zoom in on a particular part of this image, you would change these numbers right here. So 100, 100, you see it's all white. That's because it zoomed into this part right here. And let's say I made it 500, 500. See? Just zooming in. Make it less, make it more. It just kind of brings the image closer. And this image rect offset, it moves the image around. So that's how you can, like, if you want your image to not be in the center, if you want your image to be in like the corner or something, you can change these values around. 0, 0. And if you set it all to 0, 0, then it'll just be the default. So you probably won't use these much, but you have image transparency, which is, once again, this transparency of the image. And it's a value from 0 to 1, so you know it's percentage. 1 means 100% transparent, which means invisible. You have hover image. You can set this to a different image. So if a user were to hover over the image, it will change. Let me find another image to change this to. So you can change the hover image to something different. So if you hover over it, it will change the image. That's basically it for images. There's all these, I mean, there's like these 3 other ones. Scale type will just determine how the image will scale. So you can crop it, you can fit it, slice it. This is a little bit more advanced, so I'm not going to cover it, but yeah, usually I think this will be set to stretch, which is like, it will stretch the image. If you set it to crop, it will crop it out. Fit will try to fit it no matter what. Yeah, this is really handy. It'll, like, it won't stretch it, it will just try to fit it. So you're probably going to use stretch or fit. But, so that is images. Okay, no, I lied. That's not all images. There's also an image label. Image label is the same thing as an image button, except it's not a button. An image label is like a text label. The difference between a text label and a text button is that one is a button and one is a label. So this one you can actually click on. This one you can't click on. This one is an image label. If it has a label, that means you can't click on it. If you click on it, it's not going to do anything, but these you can. And as mentioned before, image button and text button, since they're buttons, it makes it easier for a scripter to code it. So if you ever want to upload, like if you ever want buttons in your game, like a play button, credits button, main menu, click it and it will work. After you code it, of course. And make sure you're using a text button for it. Last one I'm going to cover is going to be a scrolling frame. The difference between a frame and a scrolling frame is that this guy has a scroll bar, so you can actually scroll, obviously. So you can put stuff in here. Text label. Put another one. You can move this down. Now you have 2 text labels, and because it's a scrolling frame, users will be able to scroll through whatever's inside. You can change all of these properties here. I'll go through a couple. This is the image that's in the bottom. This is the middle image. So this is like if you want to customize the scrolling wheel. These are the images for the scroll. So the scroll is actually divided into 3 parts. One being the top, which is this rounded shape right here, and that is this scroll top. The other part is the middle, which is this rectangle. And then the last part is the bottom image, which is this. So you've got top, middle, and bottom, and that all forms a scrolling frame. Another thing you've probably noticed is as I scroll, this number changes, canvas position. This, a scripter might want to change this to like 100, and that would mean every single time the player starts the game, it'll be set to 100. So the scrolling frame, if you don't want the scrolling frame to be all the way at the top, then set this to a different value. And these are in X and Y coordinates, so left and right. And you can make it scroll in, you can change the position of the scroll bar, left or right. You can also change the scrolling direction if you just want them to be scrolling in one direction. See, if you set it to X, you can't really scroll. Another thing is canvas size, which is the size of the canvas. So right now it's set to 0020. If I put a 2 in the X direction for scale, it will allow me to scroll it in the X direction. It's moving, but if I were to play this game, I can move it as normally. So that's how you would make your scroll bar. That's how you'd make your scroll bar able to scroll in both directions at the same time. And if you want to lock it, you can change scrolling direction to just X, or scrolling direction to just Y. The scroll bar will show up. Oh, it's gone now. Change it just to X and it'll show up. Roblox takes a little bit to update, but that's how you can lock a scrolling direction. There's scroll bar thickness, which is the thickness of this bar, so we can like make it 10. So that is like how you want your scrolling bar to look like. You can make it thick or you can make it thin, depending on your preference. I like it thin, and you can change the scroll bar image color 3. You can make it red, blue, green, whatever you want. That is the color of the scrolling bar, so I'll just make it red. So that is scrolling frames. Okay guys, that is it for this video. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.